My name is Alena Schmakova, and I'm leading a historical dance group, Le Danse Antique, based in Edinburgh. I'm actually, as you might notice from my name and maybe from my accent, I'm originally from Russia. I was born and bred in the south of Western Siberia, not far from the city Novosibirsk, that is probably the largest city in Siberia. I discovered historical dance while I was doing my first degree in Novosibirsk, quite accidentally, actually, because my friends dragged me into the historical dance ball on one of the evenings, and I knew about the ball maybe 2 hours before the ball started. So the experience was a little bit embarrassing, but highly inspirational one. So because after that, I joined the group who organized the ball, the historical and folk dance group Medieval, based in Novosibirsk, where I studied Victorian dancing, as they would call here, a lot of 16th century dances and some English country dancing. Before I moved to Scotland, following my husband in 2009, for a while, I wasn't sure if there is any group in historical groups in Scotland. So I did a little bit of Scottish country dancing, Irish dancing, and then I found out about Nicholas Broadbridge and the assemblies, and I joined them. And after a while, I also joined Gaita, with whom I did early Renaissance dance. So it was like that up to 2012. Then I was lucky to be accepted for a historical dance summer school, and I joined actually Anne's class for French dance of 16th century. And again, it was quite inspirational experience, but in a strange way, because I realized that I miss my 19th century dances, and I started to run the classes on the basis of a local Russian school first, where most of the dancers was actually not Russian. And in 2013, I went for a historical dance festival in Moscow, and there I did workshop in Baroque dancing with Karin Madig, and basically changed my life. And so here I am 7 years after, going to talk about how to read Baroque dance notations. So I guess most of you would agree with me that dance played a much more prominent role in the previous era. And I'm going to start sharing my screen with you now. So just give me a second, please. Okay, so dance played a much more prominent role in the social life in the early periods in 17th and 18th century, including. So dancing at the time was the major entertainment for commoners and a distraction from the day-to-day hardship. But for the hybrid classes, it was an opportunity to present themselves. So in the 18th century, probably across Europe, dance literacy was a skill that was required to be considered an educated man. And there was even complaints, we can read now, that clergy was really concerned that for some ladies, dance books substituted Bibles on their bedside tables. So some of the books I probably mentioned during this lecture, and while we actually talk how to write and read notations from the Baroque period. In this lecture, I will touch briefly on the history of Feuillet Beauchamp dance notation system. And then I'll introduce the piece of choreography that we are going to try to read today. That is a solo minuet performed by Mrs. Santlow, choreographed by Antoine Labet, circa 1720s. I think it's quite a nice dance for times like that, because you can actually do it solo at your own home. After that, I will show you some basics of this notation system. What sort of signs it used to convey steps, positions, and other ornaments of the Baroque dance. Equipped with this knowledge, we will try to read the first plate or the first page of this notation. And at the end, I'll give some further resources, books and videos you can watch at your own time to practice how to read Baroque dance notations. So let's get started. So if you ever visited any dance class, you might leave this class with some sort of scribs to remember a dance that you've just learned. So basically what you did, you actually invented your own dance notation. So in order to convey the human movement, you can use different methods, symbols, figures, path mapping, numerical systems, and worlds. And Louis XIV, the King of France in the end of the 17th century, he wanted to invent a system that would convey the French style of dancing to further enhance the reputation of his court in France. So he gave this task to his dance master, Pierre Beauchamp, and in around 60s, 80s, Beauchamp lay a foundation for what was been known later as Feuillet Beauchamp notation. Feuillet published a book where he used the foundation and adjusted it a little bit and made it more accurate. He published it in 1700s. And in 1706, the book was translated into English by John Weaver. And the system became really popular, and it's actually helped to preserve the body of Baroque dance from France and from England, and a little bit from Germany from that time. The system was in use with modifications between different annotators, probably until 1780s. And after that, because dance changed and the Feuillet Beauchamp notation was actually really great in depicting the Baroque era, the belle dance style, it actually didn't cope very well with the changes of the later dance styles. The dance that we are gonna look at today is, as I said, minuet by Mrs. Santlow. I'm gonna use notations that was printed in Georgian Delights, the program from the 23rd Annual Summer School, 1990, run by Historical Dance Society, known at the time as Dolmetsch, as you probably know. And conveniently, this book is accompanied by a CD, a music CD. So you have music to practice the dance. The original notation is part of a new collection of dances containing the best ball and stage dances composed by Monsieur Labet and notated by Monsieur Rousseau in 1725. The book is located in Bodleian Library. However, you can order the reprint of this book from Steiner and Bell that was reprinted in 1999. So let's look at how actually the typical Baroque dance notation looks like. So you need to imagine that you look at a dancer from the ceiling, and what you can see here is a representation of the dance of the track of the dancer. And in this particular case, it's a circle and some form of the half diamond, and then another small circle. In the notation, you always see the melody line at the top of the notation, and it gives you indication of the tempo. And here we also have a sign for the melody that repeats, that tells us that the melody repeats twice. Counting all the musical bars, we'll get 12 bars of music. Multiply by 2, you get 24 bars of music. And there is a direct correlation between the amount of music and amount of dancing that is given on each page of the notation. However, looking at the notation, so you can see where your body originally stands, and it usually represents by sign similar to that. So you have 2 semicircles closed by a line. 2 semicircles actually represents a female body, and you can imagine it as a lady being in a skirt, and you can see from the top her skirt and her head. If you have a sign with only 1 semicircle, it usually represents a man. So a man has only head, no skirts. And finally, if we count how many bars this part of the dance has on this page, we actually count only 12 bars. So I pointed with an arrow how the bars, the dancing bars are represented in the Baroque dance notation. You can see these strikes along the line of dance, right? So how is that we have 12 dance bars and 24 musical bars here? And the answer is in the type of the dance. So the dance is minuet. And if you ever tried minuet, you probably know that pas de minuet, the basic step of the minuet, actually takes 6 counts. So each minuet dancing bar requires 2 musical bars. And it's quite important to know, for example, if you play minuets, because it might affect how you would like to convey the cadence or the strong points of the music. So you're probably all excited to know what all these dots, lines, and circles actually mean, and how we can convey these in some form of human language. Let's look actually at the basics of the notation systems. How Feuillet and Beauchamp managed to convey the information about the step. So the foundation of the system is this kind of lines that represent a step or a movement. At the letter A, you have this black dot. This is the beginning of your step. This is your original position. Then sorry, my cursor disappeared for a second. Okay, here. The line B, this is your movement or your step. It connects A with the line C that represents actually the directionality of your feet or of your foot at the end of this step. And the point D is your heel, and the point E is your toe. And it's quite important. You need to imagine your feet staying in first position kind of first position, and feel how they move like that. So the line B can help you to trace the trajectory of your step and can give an indication of the length of your step. So let's look at this pas marché or step forward. You have the origin of it, this black dot here. Then you have a line that represents your direction. And at the end, you have a direction of your foot at the end of your step. And this is opposite to, for example, a step backwards. When you have your origin, the beginning of your step, then you move backwards, and then you still see how your feet, in this case, right foot, is actually facing forward. Now, this is how actually we can do step sideways. In a very similar fashion, you have the origin of your step, is a black dot here, the line, and the direction of your foot here. But this system can also gives you the opportunity to trace a more complicated lines with your step. For example, if you want to do a beaten step, for example, if you weighted on the left foot and you want to beat your left heel with your right foot, So what you would need to draw is this kind of triangle line. And again, this is the origin of your step. This is the beaten point, and that's the direction of your foot at the end of this step. Feuillet and Beauchamp also introduced other ornamentations which you can do in Baroque dancing. The most important ones are, of course, plié and élevé, or sink and rise. So looking here, you can see a downwards strike to the line of your step. So this strike is facing backwards, or sorry, downwards, and that means sink or plié. If you see in a step the strike perpendicular to your line of step, that will be a rise. If you see two strikes, that's going to be a hop or spring. You also can indicate that that during your step, your active foot is in the air. For example, by using this cross line here, or by putting a point at the end of your near your toe. Do you remember that this part of the symbol means actually your foot? So that means you actually point in your toe. Finally, you can also show changes in your trajectory. For example, turns. And turns are usually shown as part of the circle. So if you want a quarter turn, it's going to be a quarter circle. And in order to understand the directionality of your turn, you need to find your original black dot, then go to the beginning of your semicircle that is attached to the line of step, and then trace your semicircle. And that gives you the direction that you need to turn. So for example, in this particular case, it's going to be anti-clockwise. So if you want to turn, for example, half turn, it should be a half circle. Here is the print is not ideal, but it should be a half circle. Here is indication of a 3/4 turn, and here is indication of a whole turn. And in order to give you the directionality for the whole turn, you place the dot at the beginning. So that means that where the dot is closest, this is where you need to start tracing your circle to understand the directionality. So this is if we are moving somewhere, if we are transferring weight somewhere. Sometimes in Baroque dance, we don't need to transfer weight, or we don't need to move somewhere, for example, in assembly. And for these situations, Feuillet and Beauchamp use these open circles, not open circles, white colored circles, just the, white colored circles, again with the line that indicates the directionality of your feet. So if you look at the half position means just one leg or just one foot. Again, you see that the closest point to your circle is your heel, and the end of this line is there your toe is. And at the top here, I'm giving you the examples of the feet position that were standardized in the Baroque dancing. So the first one is then you have these white colored circles together with the line representing the foot direction facing apart. And that means that you are touching with your heels and your toes are apart. Again, the third position is then the heels are touching. And the fourth position is then the heels are on the same line but slightly apart from each other. Again, you can use the marks that I was talking about in the previous slide to ornament your movement in these positions. For example, you can sink on one foot or on both, you can rise on one foot or on both. You can sprint again on one foot or on both feet. And you can also indicate that while you're in the position, you don't have a weight on one of your foot by putting a crossed line, or you need to put this one of your foot in, you need to point the toe for one of your foot. And in this case, you would place a point at the top of your line indicating the foot. So finally, you can also show how you turn, because sometimes we need to turn on the spot. And again, the principle is the same. You are finding the origin of your step, go to the beginning of your semicircle and trace in which direction you need to turn. And here they show that you can turn on one foot. You can turn on both feet, for example, doing a pirouette. And below the same, but on the other foot in another direction. So surprisingly, with using very little symbols and very little this coding system, the Feuillet Beauchamp notation could convey a wide range of movements that were characteristics for the Baroque dance of that period. But everything was important. And to illustrate that, then you need to carefully look at where all these dashes and strikes are located on your step. Because, for example, if your strike is located closer to the original black circle in the beginning of your step, that would mean that you need to sink before you move. If it is somewhere in the middle, that you are sinking while you are moving. And if it is closer to the line indicating the feet, it means that you are sinking after you made a movement. And the same for the rise or elevator. If it is closer to this black colored dot, you are rising before you move. If it is in the middle, you are rising while you are moving. And if it is closer to the feet position, you are rising after you moved. Now, as we all know the basics of this system, let's try to actually decipher the most common steps of a Baroque dance that you probably done at some point. Well, I hope you tried at some point. I'll give you couple of moments to think and count all these sink and rises, and then I will explain what the step is and what you're actually doing. Is it okay? If you can nod so I can see that it's okay. Okay, great.
Just for anyone who came in a little bit later, if you have any questions or you want Alena to explain anything again, just let me know in the chat and I'll flag it to her. But it's been very good so far.
Okay, let's start with the first one. First of all, it starts with the fourth position, right? We have right foot in front and left foot behind. Basically, we determine it basically on the direction of these lines. And then we have the origin of our step, and very close to it, we'll see the sign indicating the sink. Then we move, and then we see the sign indicating the rise. And based on the direction of this line, we actually can see that this is the left foot. Because the sign of sink is located relatively close to the origin, we can say that the sync is happening before we are moving our left foot. So probably our weight in order to sync is located on the right foot. Then we move, and after we move our left foot, we need to rise. And if it sounds familiar, it's probably because this is, oh. This is because this is actually a demi-coupé. Let's move to the next one. First of all, we already see a familiar sign, sing, rise, and we just decoded it. It's a demi-coupé. So this is the step that starts with demi-coupé and then followed by 2 pas marchés, just simple steps with no signs. And we also have this line connecting these 3 steps. And because there is only one line of connection, we can say that each of these steps or each of this movement takes the same amount of music. So probably if you have done any Baroque dance, you might recognize that this is a pas de bourrée. Moving forward, the next step is very interesting one. First of all, just basically looking into this step, you can see that there is 2 changes of weight or 2 steps happening. 1, 2. Then looking at the first one, you can see there is a lot of things happening in the beginning of before you actually move. You need to sync. Then you see these 2 lines here. That means you need to spring. And then you have a crossed line that indicates that foot is in the air. In order to do this, spring, sync, hop, and then put the foot in the air, you probably need to have a weight on the right foot. And the step with this amount of ornamentation is known as a contretemps forward. The next one is probably the most familiar step to all of you. That was, I give you a clue. This is the most popular dance throughout the 18th century, from the end of the 17th till the beginning of the 1900s. So again, looking into this step, notice that it has four steps inside of it. Again, each of these steps connected with one line of one wavy line that indicates that all of these steps takes about the same amount of music. And also we notice that we have 2 familiar steps in the beginning, 1 demi-coupé, 2nd demi-coupé. And after demi-coupé, we actually have 2 pas marchés. So it looks like these steps, this step is actually demi-coupé plus pas de bourrée. So you probably can guess that this is a minuet. And the last one, this step doesn't actually have any names in particular, but let's just see how instructive the Baroque dance notations are. So first of all, we see that we are in a position, right? And it is the first position. We need to sync, we need to hop, and we need to turn. And we need to do it on both feet. We have this dot here that indicates the directionality. So we need to trace the step this way. So that's clockwise. So that means that we need to sing, we need to spring, and we need to do a whole turn to the right on both feet. Now, when we tried all these exercises, let's move to the most exciting part. Let's try to read our minuet. Are there any questions so far?
At the moment, there's not so many questions as people just saying, can you please share these slides with them after the lecture? Because I think sure. People are trying to scribble down notes, but it'll be good to go over it. So,
okay. So this is what we saw in the beginning, the minuet performed by Mrs. Santlow. I colored the beginning of all the musical bars, all the dancing bars. So if you have a question, if you didn't understand something in for the step, you can type the number of the bar so I can quickly find it. I guess we all know that printing and recording the dances in the 18th century was quite an effort, and it was actually quite expensive. But nevertheless, it's you still can find errors and typos and some form of like imperfections in the engravings. Basically, people are people, so we all make mistakes, and sometimes it's just because something was rushed and was not checked carefully. Sometimes it's just because something was so obvious that they didn't want to overcomplicate the notation, because you can guess. The system is a little bit how to say, sometimes it's more or less intuitive that you need to do certain things and you don't need to notate them. So let's look at this one in particular. We know that we start with in the fourth or third position. It's not really clear. I think it's maybe third, because the feet are very close together. Your left foot is in front and the right foot is behind. And then you start to do your first step. We can see based on the directionality of the feet that we actually turn to face the line of dance and to trace this circle that we're gonna do. But there is no indication of this turn, where it should be. So I would put probably a mark of the turn here. It might be missed, or maybe it just was so clear that they didn't want to put it on. First of all, you can see in this first bar that there is 4 steps, right? And we just recently saw something like that, the step with the 4 steps. And again, we can see that it starts with the demi-coupé. Here is our sink. Here is our rise. And we can see that there is another demi-coupé coming after that. So it looks like it's actually pas de minuet. The difference is this one. So we have normal pas marché, but this pas marché actually has additional signs for the sink and for the rise. And this step is called pas de minuet à trois temps, or à trois mouvements, because it actually has 3 movements, 3 mouvements during the step. You need to sink in the beginning. You are sinking after your first demi-coupé before the second one, and you are sinking here again. So that's why it's minuet à trois temps, à trois mouvements. I would ask you to kind of believe me on my word, and that the next 6 steps is exactly the same. Ooh. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you use 6 pas de minuet à trois mouvements to make a big circle around. And at the 6th step, you start to straighten your path, and the last pas marché with sink and rise, you do almost in the direction that you faced in the beginning of the dance. So, and now we are at the 7th bar. Here, there is something interesting happening. We have very little steps. We have only 2 steps actually. And we also have these wavy strikes along the path of the dance. Actually, I told you in the beginning that this notation was done by Rousseau in 1720s. And Rousseau used slightly different signs for his notations. So these ones in his notations indicate the pause. If you look at the Feuillet notated dances, the pauses there look differently. But well, he did it in this way. Anyway, difficult to say what was on his mind. We have one demi-coupé sideways, right? Because here is our sink, here is our rise. We have two pauses, and then we have a beaten step that goes to the heel, right? Because here is the location of the heel. And again, this beaten step is also demi-coupé because it starts with the sink and finishes with the rise. If you think about timing of this step, we can see that there is a line that is connecting these demi-coupés and telling us that these steps takes the same amount of music. We also have these waving lines indicating the pause. So what would we probably do? We would do a demi-coupé on 1. We will pause on 2 and 3. We will do another demi-coupé on 4, and we'll pause on 5 and 6. And now we arrive at the bar 8. And bar 8 is a very interesting one. First of all, you can see a position happening here. Not really nicely drawn, I would say, but still, this is your one foot, this is another foot, and they are located somewhere around fourth position, right? But actually, that step doesn't start with the position, though it's coming first in our notation. The origin of this step is this black dot, and we always need to remember that the black dot is the origin of our step. So what's actually happening here? You need to place your right foot behind into the 4th position, behind your left one. You need to rise on your toes because there is a rise sign, and you need to do a whole turn to the right, because we have these circles here with the dots here. And for this reminds you probably about a pirouette. And as it's common in a pirouette, it actually usually has another dot at the toe, near the toe part of your foot. This indicates that there is no that your foot are pointed, but basically you're just doing the pirouette there. So this is our 9th bar, and now we are approaching our half a diamond shape. So looking here at the first part of this half diamond, again, we can see a step that consists from 4 interlinked steps. For me, it's always the clue. It's probably minuet. Now let's look what sort of minuet it is. We have 2 demi-coupés and 2 pas marchés after. So that's actually a normal minuet, basic minuet step. Minuet step are do mouvement. But interestingly, there is this tiny wave at the top of your first step. This tiny wave indicates a slight tilt in your shoulders, not a full turn, just a less than even half turn. So some movement in your shoulders. Based on what the steps is telling us, that it goes along this diagonal line, you would turn your body, the upper part of your body, from facing front to facing in parallel to this line. And another thing that we need to notice, that actually our first step, and as you know, minuet starts with the right foot. It goes above your line of dance. And that is also important because it shows you that the step is kind of in the open position. You are not crossing with your feet, with your foot. You're not crossing your trajectory. Let's look at the bar 10. And this step actually illustrates what I want to say for the bar 9. So I'm very sorry about the sign here. It's moved slightly. So, but I need to say that there is a sink and the semi-curve that indicates the turn. So after your tilt here, you want a quarter turn so you can make another part of this half diamond. And if you notice, the first step is actually showing you slightly below, like below your line of dance. And this is usually indicates that the step is gonna be closed one. This is the closed one. And if we look at the last step of this minuet, we again notice that there is a sink and rise at the in the middle of the last step that shows us that this is minuet à trois mouvements. And now we are approaching the bar 11. And here, again, you need to trust me that bar 11 and 12, it's the same step that is known as contretemps de minuet. And this is, with these two steps, with these two contretemps de minuets, we need to actually turn halfway. So at the end of our 12 bar, this is the end here, we're gonna face in the opposite direction that we started. So let's see how we actually notate and what's actually we need to do. The first step has a lot of things to be done. You need to sink, you need to hop, you need to put your foot in the air, you need to turn, and this all happening almost before you actually move your foot forward. And then after you move your foot forward, you actually need to rise. So at the end of this step, you're on a demi-point. And then let's look at the next one. It tells us that before you move here, there is a spring. And at the end, you have your left foot without a weight, because we have this sign here. And we also have a position where is our right foot is in front and the left foot is in the fourth position without weight, somewhere behind. So it's a little bit like arabesque, but kind of, so you have foot in front and the foot behind that is in the air. And because we have this spring here, this spring is actually not happening on the left foot. This spring is happening on your right foot. Because then the spring is located so close to the beginning of the step that indicates that it happens before the movement. So this is a little bit tricky. And now we have the last step of the last movement of this step. We have a sink in front in the beginning of it before we actually move. And it's basic because of the directionality of the feet. We know that this is going to be our left foot, which is currently behind us without the weight. So again, we sink on our right foot and moving our left foot forward, and at the end we spring into the onto the left foot. And in the bar 12, the same happens. You have your sing, you have your hop, you have your foot in the air, that is part of the contretemps that we learned before, and we finish the step on our toes. And as soon as they finish the step on the toes, we would spring on this, and our left foot will be behind in the fourth position. As soon as we've done this spring, we would sink again on the right foot and move after that, moving our left foot forward to finish the step with the hop on the left foot. And that would finish the choreography for the first page. Are there any questions? That's usually kind of an ambiguous sign. Either I explained everything very well, or you didn't understand anything. Oh, what is it from Anne? Yes.
No, must have just been explained incredibly well. Everyone's probably just digesting a little bit, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, or it's completely new to people, in which case they're completely lost, I think. But
Anna's saying something, Lottie. I think she's no.
Oh,
I'm not sure what's happening. I cannot see the chat.
It's fine. Everyone's saying they're not lost. They're understanding it.
Okay.
It's well explained. You're doing.
So
you're doing
that was our first page. Now let's go. I promised you useful sources where you can continue. In such a short format, it's difficult to explain. Oh, no. Just one moment. Can we go back? I know it's a lot of information here, but this is this kind of the most typical notation of the time. What did you notice? Most of this notation tells you only what your feet are doing, with some indication of what your upper body doing, right? But a little bit. Also, I touched on some of the step. I touched about the rhythm and the step, but basically it doesn't tell you clearly that you need to do step in this particular moment. So for people of that time, some things were obvious and they didn't record them because they just knew it. For us now, it raises a lot of questions and ambiguity, and we are facing a lot of choices at each of our step, how we are going to do it according to the music, what are we going to do with our hands, how we are going to move our upper body. Also, if you notice, there is no indication of actually proper tempo. I mean, we know that this is a free triple time music, but how fast it would be in 1720s, how fast the musician should play it for the dancer. So we need a lot of additional information to actually reconstruct the dance from just notation. I would say notations are great because in the beginning, when I started to do the Baroque dancing, I was lost in this sinking and rising, that there was no logic in them at all compared to the 16th century. I know that I do like double in this way and continuance in this way. I know where are my sink and rise. But here, the sink and rise can be before the step, after the step, and in the middle of the step, whenever. And without a notation, it was really difficult for me to understand the dynamic of the step or how the steps actually works. So I found the notation really helpful in memorizing the dance and understanding the dance. But as you can see from this little speech, it's not 100% accurate. You still need a lot of other information to think how you actually construct the dance. And basically, because it's your choices based on the material that you've read, and the material that you read can also be ambiguous, you can come up with different interpretation of the same dance from exactly the same notation. And this is what I would like to point out. The interpretation will be based on choices. So now, further sources. Most of the books actually available online in different libraries, and I'm planning to give the organizers all these links so they can include it into the description to the YouTube video as well, so people can just click on them. The Feuillet choreography is available from this source. But you also can order a paper copy, another facsimile that was created a couple of years ago from the French company. It costs about 20 euros. John Weaver translation, where there is this great website that contains most of the Weaver's books. There are 2 editions of the orchesography, plus a very interesting and useful book about cadenza. So, and how to actually dance, Baroque dance with music. So Weaver wrote a little bit about that. There was a very useful site from Paige Whiteley-Boggess. Here is just the link to the archive of this site, to the old version of this website. Unfortunately, she updated her website. Her original one had a very concise version of with all these ornamentations and all these signs there. So it was useful in the beginning that you forget, oh, what is the difference between sink and rise? How many strikes I need to do to indicate the spring? So it's still working. I don't know for how long. You can still consult it if you suddenly forget something. This is the link to the HDS publication and the CD. I would also recommend a guide published by Philippa White and Judith Appleby from the Baroque, from the consort, from the Baroque dance. Yes, it's useful because it actually gives you example of some complicated steps in different rhythms in triple and a duple meter. So, and it's a very interesting book. And also, if you want to know more about Hester Santlow, Moira Goff wrote an interesting book about her in 2017. It is currently available on Amazon. And also this paper, Seductive Decorum, the solo minuet for a girl, which Moira presented at the conference, the Minuet in Dance and Space in 2007, where she mentioned all the existing bodies of Baroque solo minuets. And this article actually inspired me to dig for this Miss Santlow minuet. And now here is some video links. As I said, because you need to do your own choices, you can come up with different versions of the same choreography. I saw at least 4 or 5 available on YouTube. Here I'm listing 2. One is by Moira, another one by Paige. And also there is a video on Le Danse Antique channel, or there will be a video on Danse Antique channel, where I made this step. So I tried to make these steps in real time, well, in my back garden. So to indicate how the notation that I just tell you goes with the steps. So you have an example of what's actually happening. Finally, I would like to say thank you to Irene Ginger, who taught me how to read the notations at the very first International Summer Academy of Baroque Dance organized by Karine Madig. And to Karine, big thank you to her for continuing teaching me how to read the Baroque dance notations. I would like to thank Robin and Maureen, because they actually gifted me part of the extensive dance books collection that included the HDC publication. Also, I would like to thank Lottie and HDS committee for organizing this lecture. And just final bit, a little bit of advertisement. Maybe you've already heard about that, but I'm involved in organizing a virtual Midsummer Early Dance and Music Festival that happens on Midsummer weekend. We have a lot of interesting workshops and speakers, and I'm really excited to and look forward to the event. If you're interested in a Baroque dance, I would like to highlight 2 sessions that are happening as part of this festival. The first one is run by Aubert. You probably recognize him because he was the man who played the king in the video, The King Who Invented Ballet. So he's gonna be talking about variations and evolution of the basic minuet step from the first one in 1688 to the last description that we have from 1797. And he will be talking about rhythm, how it goes with music, and what sort of ornamentation you can do. It's happening on Saturday, 5 p.m. The second session is by Edmund Fairfax from Canada. Edmund actually published the book in 2003 about style and technique in 18th century ballet. And here he's going to present his ongoing research about that. He will be talking about the connection of Baroque dance and the modern ballet. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to write to me. The email address is here, and I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. So thank you very much.